Okay, I'm going to go over the apparatus here today and or right now and give you some dimensions. And this is my modification of the tool, and I don't know if it resembles, it probably resembles any lever, but give you the dimensions of this thing. The arm for this is 26 inches long. It's 1x1 tubing, and it bolts to the column or the tower, and that's 17 inches high, 1x1. At the base of it is two pieces of half by half angle and some strap brace that's 1/8 of an inch by 1 inch. It's all cold rolls. And the spring tool, as I mentioned, out of 1 1/8 conduit with a washer plug welded into the bottom of it, a notch cut in it, and it's got a nut welded to the top of it so that I can attach it to the arm. And these are 1x2 inch strap metal brackets welded on, and 1/4 inch bolts to hold it together. And it, you know, one hand easily depresses the spring once you've got it engaged. It works pretty good. There are other modifications I tried, and I think this seems to work out the best once you get the spring engaged. It is a chance to bump your head with this thing or let it come down on you, but that's why I'm wearing my elf hat today. An alternative shaft would be a half inch square tubing bolt welded to the bottom of it so you can run thread stock through it, double nutted. This is I think this is 14 inches long, 12 to 14 somewhere in there. Vertical, as you see, 16 inches. That might be just a little long, but works. And then it engages the spring tool, which is here 4 inches long, quite a bit shorter than the other one. Does the same job. And the attachments about 4 inches of thread stock. So those are the basic parts. I tried doing a brace to keep the arm parallel, and on this one it's got a hole in the side so that it would be levered and kept pretty much vertical, but it tends to can a little bit, kind of does that stuff. And I just eliminated this. You're going to get into a position here where you've got, and I did it taking a spring out, that you have to remove this to get it out of the spring once you've got the clip installed on the spring. And the other option is when you're trying to release the tension on this thing to get the spring out of there without impaling yourself. And so I just eliminated this cross arm from my design. I've seen it in others, but it didn't seem to work for me. Another alternative is to use the modified clip, similar to what this other tool design is. And my modification of the other tool design is to add a piece of conduit as a retainer for the spring to keep the spring on the clips. And really the handiest part, and here's the conduit. I think I showed it to you once. The best tool for while you're manipulating this thing is a pair of water pump pliers to keep that spring contained while you're releasing the tension on it. Tom Indy's suggestion is that you just take and put a pair of vice grips on the end of the right by the ball on the end of this shift lever, and have it fairly well secured. And then when you take the clip out, you've depressed the spring, you take the clip out, then you've loaded the spring up against the vice grips. You take that whole conglomeration, turn it over, or try and work it upside down to where there's very little space in there to work by turning this thing over and doing it there. You just dry that clip out with a screwdriver, and then you've got the tension against the vice grips. Then you just open the vice grips up, and then hopefully it all clears without hitting your foot or something, ricocheting off something, to release it. And I'd rather compress the spring, take the clip out, release the tension on the spring under control, and then you're in good shape. And I think that's my safest way of doing this extraction of the spring. And then the reverse, you want to push that spring into the so that you're below the ball. And of course I didn't do it the first go around here, but get that below the ball, below the swelled place on the shift lever that keeps the clip, matches up with a clip, and get that compressed, and then you've got control over it. And if it were to slip, the spring would still be contained because you've got the tool over the shift lever. So those are all kind of key points of this. And here's the apparatus that sure makes it easy for me to either remove the spring and examine everything, and then get ready to reinstall, and then use this same contraption for installing. And I don't think, even if you've got just one or two, you and a buddy are doing them, or it's probably a little safer with someone else. But I did this all solo, and works out fine. So with this apparatus, which took a few hours to design and put together and trial run it, but now it's pretty square, and the other guys in the club might want to tackle this, or you run across somebody who needs some help with a shift lever, because they wear out. And so we'll continue with this. I did want to show you one last thing that I think I missed somewhere in my explanations, and that's the lever for my device here. And this is like 24 inches long, and it sets up to the tower, bolts up to the tower. You add on and take off the tool to compress the spring. And I made this up as inch square tubing, 2 by 1 inch, or 2 by, I think it's 1/8 inch strap steel welded onto it to hinge it, and 1/4 inch bolts. So that's really I think the one part that was out of camera range. And the procedure here for reassemble or disassemble and then reassemble. After you take it apart, then you want to inspect the forks and the shafts and all the parts for wear, and check the forks for alignment, and the end of the ball on the shift lever. All of this Indy covers pretty well, but let me walk you through it. On the levers, the ball on the end of the shift lever will wear square. You can weld it and file it round. If you're going to replace it with a another shift lever that's plated and ready to be used, make sure that you check your clearance, check your dimension of the ball, and you want that dimension in the ball to match your fork gap in the side of the shift fork. I did that with all the parts here. I've got maybe 5-6 pairs, and I went through the shafts, I went through the forks. I put the fork backward on the, I think I showed it where it was, one was bent out of all of them. The rest of them are parallel, and this one was bent, and this has got a slight, it's pretty parallel, slight bend to it. But basically, I thought, well, I'll try and see what it'll do to straighten it. And I took the fork, put it in the vise, brass on either side of the vise, so I didn't scratch it up too bad. And I just took one of the shafts and give it a tweak, and by gosh, it's soft and it straightened right up. And it's now one of the sets that I'll show you in a minute, and it straightened up. Then the gap in there I measured and tried to match up the ball for the shift lever that I'm going to use for that assembly, and the gap in the two forks, shift forks, and of course that's going to vary, and don't believe that the reproduction fork is going to be 0.49, which Tom Indy mentions as a dimension, and then the gap would be 0.493, so 0.003 clearance. Well, in a perfect world, maybe that would be it for a new old stock one or something, or you get them milled in a machine shop, and there you are. But we're not there, and I didn't intend to go to those ends. But what I did do was go through with a micrometer and check the balls of the shift levers and match those up to the gaps in the forks, and it came out pretty decent. Here's one example. This is 3031, and the ball is 0.5010. The fork is 0.5030, and so that's 0.002 difference, and the other one is 5030. So these are pretty well matched up. And in fact, this one that you might not be able to see it at this light and everything, but this is the one I had painted yellow that was bent, and I straightened it. So I've got a set now of the shafts and the forks matched to the ball on the end of the shift lever, and this is a set, and that's what I'm going to put together. These have a little bit of corrosion on the shaft, but not very much, and they're bathed in oil all the time, so it's really not too bad. The groove keeps that end oiled that's into the pocket of the casting, and then the grooves for each shift lever are pretty clean. There's a little bit of wear there, but I think this is still going to be serviceable. And you know, worst case is I get it together and it pops out of gear, but I don't think it's going to do that. You buy a new shaft for either or both, and you're going to eliminate this question. But these, I think, will still be functioning fine. The detents that I'm going to use are almost they're the old ones, but they're formed very well. So that's one set. Another set, this is 2829, and the dimensions on this were the ball, let's see if I measured it. Okay. Yeah, the ball is 0.4980. One lever is 0.4960, and the other one is 4965. So we're going 60 to the ball of 8. Let's see, 498, 496. I'm going to have a little bit of problem here because it'll be a little tight. Let's see, 6. No, that's the right direction. The ball will be smaller than the gap. Okay, I think I got that right. And so that's set up together, and I keep them all together after I measure them, and we'll put it together. All right. One other point that I want to try and make is that it would be a little embarrassing to get the shafts wrong on the casting. And I mentioned this once before. This would be the passenger side where the emergency brake on at 3031 or late 29, and the access for the detents is on the driver's side. The passenger side shaft is the low reverse. That's the three even notches. That'll be these 3 even notches. That goes on the passenger side. The other shaft with 2 notches close together and one down toward the end of the shaft, that's second and high, and that goes on the driver's side. And if you think about it, you're shifting, you're going to go into low and reverse, so you're picking on this shaft over here. When you bring the lever over toward you, when you go into second and high, you're picking up the other shaft, which is this shaft here closest. So you're pushing away with the lever, the shaft is closest to you as a driver. I think that makes sense. And that's to avoid some confusion and a little bit of problem when you try and shift it. So those are the main points I wanted to make on the inspecting and putting the tools together. It's not difficult, not totally difficult to weld up the ball and file it round or semi-fround. I think when I did it, I made a jig with some like a 2x4 and put a notch in it so that I could spin the shaft and then do the file and get it fairly round, and then keep checking it to make sure it's not oblong or out of shape when you're filing it. And I don't think going with power equipment would be the answer. I do have a large belt sander which might work too, but I hadn't really tried that. And then for 60 bucks you buy a replacement shaft, but remember that the ball is not going to be to spec on the end of the shift lever. So you're going to have to match the gaps in your forks to the ball on the end of the shift lever, or you're not going to shift. I ran into that after I got the tower put together, and I tried shifting it, and it stuck. Well, it was stuck because there was a difference between the fork gap, the gaps in the forks for the shift lever, and the ball on the end of the shift lever. You can't assume that all of this stuff is to spec, especially the replacements, or you send it out to get it chromed. They had to build the ball up too, and I have one that I got that came out of a supply house that had been re-plated, and it looks really nice, a nice plating job on it and everything, but the ball is large. And so in order to get that thing to work, we have to match up the fork gaps to the gaps in the forks to the ball on the end of the shift lever. And you would find it out, but I'm trying to save you a little bit of a headache and point that out ahead of time.